But Max, I'll open up with you with a general question, and it's one that I've seen asked a few times. Is there too much right now? Are we over analyzing pitching to a degree, or do we want to be here where we're doing all the pitch design and meticulously looking at everyone's pitches to maximize them? Where are we right now at the beginning of 2025 with pitch technology?
The initial question is it too much? I think I'll lean towards Paul Skeens the other day was on Foul Territory, and he gave actually a pretty good answer about the usage of his sinker, splinker, splitter, whatever you want to call it. He calls it his sinker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the analysts came to him and said that he should throw it more to lefties, right? So the question about is it too much is always just about, well, is it a filtration process, right? The players, the pitchers, and everything like that, they're basically taking in data from the coaches and the analysts and everything. And the question is it too much is the question for them. And that gets answered individually. Paul Skeens may be a person who says, give me everything you got. I think Sonny Gray has talked to Rob before about how like he just really likes to take in everything. Give me everything you got and I'll weed through it myself. Whereas other pitchers I've seen, like, give me 1 or 2 data points and that's all I need to figure out how to dominate.
I think we got you, Rob. Go ahead.
I think so.
Yes.
Good. I'll let Max keep talking, but I think I can talk now. This is awesome.
Yes. Good to have you on, Rob, and everything. So the question for me is, I think the answer is no, because I think teams are very, very good at the filtration process. A couple of years ago, the New York Yankees came under a lot of fire about how they filtered their data and everything. But if you noticed, all of it was mainly on the offensive side of things. And I think that's because Matt Blake is very good at his job, right? And they have a really good pitching coach core. Now Preston Claiborne coming in as the assistant pitching coach, but Mike Harkey has been there for long time. So it's all about who's filtering the data. But there's no way to have too much. Everything matters. When I was at Santa Barbara City College, our head coach had a saying, it's only dumb if it doesn't work, right?
Right.
So as long as you live by that mindset of like, we keep an open mind, it's impossible to have too much, in my opinion. You just have to know how to filter it. And I think teams are becoming very, very good at that filtration process.
I think so too, especially as it gets more prevalent. Rob, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with Max that that teams are filtering it properly so it isn't too much, or do you see anything differently there?
I mean, I tend to agree with that. I think teams are probably filtering it pretty well, although some are more protective than others. Like some pitchers just want every piece of information. They can't talk to analysts. Everything is like gatekept from them, or kept from them. And then they go outside to get that information. Other folks, yeah, absolutely, give me everything you got, and the teams are very good with that. So I think it really depends on the organization itself and the pitcher itself. Kind of could be all over the place.
You actually hit on my next question about going outside when maybe you're not getting what you think you should be getting or what you want. How are teams balancing that? We'll start with you, Rob, of players going outside the organization to get stuff, going to a Tread, a Driveline, or any of these other academies, versus keeping it all in-house and, making sure that they get what they want. Because I'm sure some teams probably don't like their players going outside and maybe getting a different message. So how do we balance that? I'm sure it's team by team, player by player, but how have you seen that being navigated these recent years as we've expanded more and more on the information?
It's definitely changed a ton. It used to be like, hey, we're in control. We don't want you going outside. We're going to dictate what you do. Then it just became unmanageable. You can't do that. Like players are going to do what they're going to do in the especially in the off season. But
right,
you're going to you want this information, and these guys are specialists for a reason. Now it is just a matter of communication. So everybody's pretty familiar with these outside facilities. They just want to know what's going on. Like they want to be kept in the loop. Like, hey, what were you working on? How much did you throw? How much do I need to ramp you up? And that's the real disconnect now, or some place that is the opportunity to get better. Knowing like how to ramp somebody up. Everybody's not going to be at the same place when you start spring training. Some are going to be, be throwing for the entire off season. Others are, like old school where they didn't pick up a baseball in the off season. So it's going to depend, and there just has to be better communication.
For sure, Max. How have you seen players navigating that? If they're told, like, have you run into anything where a team has told somebody not to do something that maybe was giving them a benefit that they still want to do, and then that creates a little bit of consternation there. Have you run into any of that?
Yes, I won't say who and where and
That's
everything
fine,
like that,
you don't
but
have to give names.
I've seen it's tough because if if you're the player, right, you just want to get better, right? And
Right.
that's ultimately what matters to you. From the team perspective, a lot of it is if you're not there, how much do you trust it, right? If you can't see it yourself, you're obviously going to be wary of it and everything. And teams, as Rob pointed out, it's just about communication. When I coach my guys and everything, and they go off to drive line or tread, I tell them to tell their trainer to contact me, and so that way we can talk through about what we think is best for them. Because ultimately, that's the thing that matters: is what is best for the pitcher, what is best for the athlete.
Yeah.
But from a team perspective, again, these are millions of dollars that they're investing into these guys, and when they go off and do their own thing, they're obviously going to be like, if you get hurt, that's millions
Now
of
we have
dollars
some
down the
questions.
drain.
Right,
That's
right.
they have concerns. And so I understand it from both perspectives. I think if you think about it as the players are the priority, you should let them go out. But I understand that from teams' perspectives, they don't always view it like that because there's way more money on the line for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd
Go ahead,
one
Rob.
other quick point is that I think that some teams may pigeonhole like, hey, we need you to be this guy. You're going to
Yeah.
go after lefties, and we don't need you to work on new pitches. You don't need this thing to get the guys that we want you to get out, or we have you pegged as a reliever. I want to start. So there are guys that maybe want to add new pitches, want to do different things, and there can be a disconnect then between what the team wants and what the player views his career at. And I think, I think most folks are pretty good at letting the player take charge of the career, but some folks do want to, like, hey, this is your role, and don't worry your pretty little head over adding this other stuff. Because we got it taken care of. And then when it comes time for contract negotiations, it's like, nah.
Right.
Exactly. I was about to add on to that. It's a way to save money, right? And
Mhm.
listen, ultimately, even the richer teams, even Andrew Friedman, they're going to find a way to save money where they can, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it. It's an unfortunate reality, but Rob is absolutely right. It's certainly a big part of the situation.
In y'all's experience, have you guys seen any situations where players are maybe getting too much of a fire hose, but maybe they're not able to tell a team, communicate with them that this is too much, and thus it's hurting them more than it's helping them? I'll start with you on that, Max. Have you seen that in your experiences where players getting too much info?
Yeah, absolutely. Data dumping, right? Like
Mhm.
data dumping was, I think, when this stuff really first started coming around, teams didn't know how to filter it. So they were just being like, acting like everybody's Sonny Gray and just giving them all the information. And players are like, this is too much. I don't know what to do. And it overwhelmed them and everything. Does it happen as much as it used to? No, but it still happens, right? The better teams understand their players more, probably because they just talk to them more,
Right.
right?
Just
Teams
communicate.
that are not as up to date on these modern methods, their problem is really just they don't talk to their players enough to understand what they need. As everything we're going to talk about really just goes back to communication. If you understand your players, you know how to filter to them properly. But yes, absolutely, data dumping, that will probably never go away. That's like impossible thing to fix.
Yeah, because like you guys said, everyone's different. And so, not everyone's going to be a Sonny Gray type or says, give me everything. But yeah, the hurdle that I worry about is can they communicate that like, hey, it's too much. I can really only do this, that, and the other. And that's not a skill set that every player has to communicate with authority to say, no, I don't want this. Rob, I imagine you've seen similar.
Yeah, it's funny that we keep mentioning Sonny Gray because there's a great Sonny Gray story when the Yankees were working with him back in the day where they were like, hey, you spin the ball really well. Your fastball's got elite spin. We want you to throw at the top of the zone. What they didn't realize, and Sonny was like, I get hammered when I throw at the top of the zone, but I'll listen to you. Even then, a relative veteran was like having a hard time pushing back. And they didn't, at that point, they didn't realize it wasn't a particularly efficient fastball. Yes, he did spin it well, but it wasn't as efficient. So there's a point where you give somebody this data, but you don't have the full picture. We did the same thing before we even knew what seam shifted wake was. Everybody was aiming for 100% efficiency on everything. And then we realized that you see 100%, you're like, that's good, right? We want 100% in school and everything. So these guys were all trying to do that. And coaches were like, if you didn't do this, you're not going to throw a fastball. And now we realize that, hey, if you have a lot of gyro, you might be able to take advantage of seam shifted wake and a whole bunch of other things that we messed up a whole generation of pitchers with unlimited data.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you're just giving them unlimited data, it's like, well, what do I even do with this?
Yeah.
Shifting back to the tech specifically, is Rapsodo, I know, has been a big thing. Is that still the cutting edge right now, Max, or is there something beyond Rapsodo that players and teams are going for right now?
The TrackMan, if you're talking about like portable units and everything,
Yes.
TrackMan Portable has kind of become the more popular choice and everything. I think it's basically just the data versus a radar versus a camera, and the radar tends to give more accurate readings on seam shifted wake, which it does help with. Sorry, caught me off guard a little bit there. It does help with sinker design a little bit more, and as that has become a little bit more popular, I mean, I think it was 2023 or maybe it was 2024 this past year, where sinkers were the first time ever a positive run value pitch.
Yeah.
And I think Rob will speak to this better than I can, but it's just people know how to manipulate better than ever before. And the people that should be throwing sinkers are throwing sinkers, and the people who shouldn't aren't, right?
Yeah, for a while we had like everyone throwing them, and it's like, no, this doesn't work for everyone.
Right. It doesn't. Garrett Cole doesn't throw a sinker and probably shouldn't throw a sinker, right? But the TrackMan Portable is very helpful with that. Rapsodo is still a great resource and everything. Obviously, the Hawkeye tech in stadium, that allows the SatCast data and everything like that to come through. There's the answer of like, what's the most prominent use of tech? I don't even know. There's probably, and the force plates have become immensely popular.
Yep.
Biomechanical data is very popular. That's what Tread and Driveline are really leading the way on and everything. But if you're talking specifically for pitch tracking and everything, I would say the TrackMan Portable unit is probably the most popular thing right now.
Rob, do you want to add to that at all before my next question?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned the biomech data. Like, it's cool. Like, we can get stuff in game now, or teams can get stuff in game with the Hawkeye stuff. So we can, instead what used to be these labs that we'd set up, you can actually look at in-game situations, how pitchers move, which is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I love seeing the sinkers come back for the folks that can throw it. And we know a lot more about whether someone's a natural pronator or supinator. There's so much that goes into it, and we're like at such a great time in pitch design and all that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and obviously we're on PitcherList's platform right now. Nick and I, as well as both of you, we're all huge nerds for pitching. So this is it is a golden age, and it's really awesome. We know, or it seems like things are a bit more balanced at the major league level. Not perfectly, but I think every team is technologically forward right now. I'm sure there's still discrepancies, of course, between the best and the worst. But Rob, I want to start with you on this one. Where's it at in the minor league level? Is it still like a Wild West where some organizations are way better than others? Have we raised the floor there in recent years with tech and how we're analyzing pitching in the minors?
The floor has definitely been raised, but I don't know that it's an even playing field. I don't have a lot of experience with various teams, but I don't believe it is, just based on talking to pitchers that, some know every piece of their data, others just don't. Colleges, same way. Like, some colleges are extremely advanced, and others just don't have the money or don't have the wherewithal to get that data.
Yeah, Max, I'm sure you have some experience with that as well, that you could speak to the discrepancies between organizations, both minors and college. Are you seeing something similar to what Rob's seeing with regards to that?
Yeah, the difference between the top end on the minor league side and the bottom end is still pretty large, and that's where teams are making up a significant amount of value. For example, the New York Mets, right? They have produced a good amount of upper tier pitching prospects just in the last couple years or so. They're a team that adapted in the last few years their pitching philosophy to a more database, tech-based approach, and obviously they're now seeing dividends. Teams that don't do that, I won't name them, but you can figure it out. They obviously do not have a lot of upper tier pitching prospects and everything. And so there is still a very big discrepancy, but I agree with Rob. The floor is certainly raised. It's just not quite to the point where I think it could get to.
Yeah, I definitely think we could be higher on that floor, but at least it's not quite as, the dark ages as it was not too long ago, where some teams were just completely off base and other teams were light years ahead. We've at least seen that gap shrink a little bit, but it's definitely still there. Max, as a pitching coach yourself, when you start in with somebody, do you have a process that you follow for each guy right away? Or how do you determine if someone's going to be open to the tech and to the data? Like where's the communication start with you when you're working with somebody and trying to get them into the 2020s here in terms of this information and technology?
This is an extremely loaded question, but it's a good question. It all kind of starts with, have I seen them move before, right?
Mhm.
So if I have, then I kind of have a preconceived idea of what they do well and what they don't do well, because everything's going to start with defining what they do well and defining what they don't do well and working from there. And you're trying to build on the things that they do well and take the things that they don't do well and turn them into maybe just average, right?
Mhm.
Always trying to take a weakness into not a weakness and take a strength into an elite skill, right? And their aptitude for data is a big part of that. And that's kind of like questions about, hey, you spin your ball like this, there's a difference in the observed axis and the actual axis and everything. Do you understand why that is? And if they do, then you understand that you can probably go a little bit deeper with them. If they don't, and you explain the concept of seam shifted wake to them, and they just look at you like you're from a different planet and you have no idea what you're talking about, then you kind of just do, hey, keep throwing it like that. I'm not going to adjust it, right? Like, if it's good. Everything kind of comes back to, it all depends, which I'm sure my fiance
Right.
probably hates hearing that at this point, because I say
It
it all
is
the
true,
time.
though.
But
It is true.
It is true. And so you kind of talk to every single one and you figure out what they're good at, what they're not good at, what their level of aptitude is. If their level of aptitude is high, you can go deep and you can talk about things. If it's not, you go back to like, all right, do this and you should see results. And if you don't, we'll kind of adjust from there, right? But everything comes back to, in my opinion, you need to start with what they do well first, because it helps with like confidence. It's just
Yeah.
confidence, right? Pitching
Getting
is
buy-in
really
with
hard.
them.
Like, baseball is so difficult, and so if you start with the things they're good at, they're more confident and they're more willing to trust you.
Yeah, you come in cooking them off rip on these 3 things that they do poorly. They don't really want to listen to
They
you
don't
as
want to
much
listen to you.
anymore.
They will not
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was going to say that was a mistake that I think I made early on. Like I always tried to make their weakness a strength instead of like, focusing on your strengths and having outlier stuff and then trying to minimize or do away with the weaknesses, like cancel them out or say, hey, don't do that. As opposed to like, I was always like trying to just build up like, hey, if we make your weakness your strength, all of a sudden you're going to be better. And it's not really a thing. Like you can't do that with everybody. It just really depends. The other thing I've noticed, like, especially talking to pitchers nowadays, um, everybody knows their stuff. Like the amount of folks that don't know their numbers on pitches and why pitches do certain things, they generally have really, from even young kids on up, everybody's got a pretty good idea now of technology. Some are better than others, obviously. But even like I was talking to Chris Sale last year at the All-Star game about his seam shifted wake changeup that he just started throwing. And I was amazed to hear the word seam shifted wake out of Chris Sale. I was like, wait, is this like really happening? Like, dude, you're like Mr. Old School, I'm doing what, and he's bringing this up. Like, I don't know what this means, but this works. And it was great for me. So you have guys that are willing to try anything now, which is so, so cool. And
Yeah.
the way technology is changing everybody.
And it helped him get back to the pinnacle.
He
And
did
now
win a Cy Young. So
yeah,
Yeah.
Cy Young winner now. And
It
so
worked out well
that is
for him.
awesome. You did hit on something. You mentioned kids, Max. How deep is this going with the tech and the data? Are we getting into the high school and junior league levels here? And is that too much? Do you have any feelings on how deep we should go, and maybe they shouldn't be looking at this until age whatever? Where do you come out on that with regards to kids, let's say 18 and under?
So I think in high school it's important because, truth be told, if you're in the ages of 15 to 17 and everything like that, there's money on the line for you.
Yeah.
Truth be speaking, with the NIL and everything now, like if you're not doing everything you can to get better, well, chances are somebody in your age group is, and that's going to cost you opportunities. And again, unfortunately, the world kind of revolves around money, so it's going to cost you money, right? So in high school, guys, it's fine. Below that, I mean, I think you guys will agree with me. Youth baseball is extremely broken, and
Oh my God, completely.
the system is really, really bad. And the benefit of this information is more of like, it's fun for the kids, but like if you're sitting there and a 9-year-old's throwing on a Rapsodo and you're trying to get actual information, respectfully speaking, you're wasting your time.
Get a life.
Like,
Yes.
get a life. Like that's so the goal for pretty much, at least in my opinion, and again, you guys are feel free to disagree with me, but until you're like 12 or 13 or so, I would personally say that just have fun.
I
Like
completely agree.
it should, like, learn how to throw a fastball, learn how to throw a changeup,
And that's it.
and you
Don't
should be
even
fun.
get a
And
hook
have
going yet.
and make sure that after every single time that you're having fun. When I work with kids that are under the age of 12, after every single time I work with them, I was like, how are you feeling? And did you have fun? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what did we learn? Right. Because this is an opportunity for them to feel like if they had fun, they'll learn something, which means they'll come back. Right. And if they had fun and they're healthy, then they'll obviously, on my end, they're going to keep paying me.
Yeah.
Right. Which is good. But the point is, like, youth baseball is supposed to be fun. And if it's not fun, and I think for a lot of people it's not, that stuff's not going to help make it fun for them. Just make sure that they're having fun. It's not necessary.
I see way too many TikToks of freak parents turning a game into something awful because they got to live vicariously through their kids. So yeah, I'm with you. I agree that, not until you're 12, 13, 14, should you even be looking at anything like that or throwing any sort of breaking balls. I'm with you. Rob, do you share in that feeling with in terms of youth sports?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the one thing, sometimes when we say fun, we mean like goofy. Like, it doesn't have to be goofy to be fun.
It can
Like,
still be competitive.
Absolutely. Feel like you learned something, feel like you're competing. You can teach them stats or teach it, but the idea of using a Rapsodo for a 9 or 10-year-old is a little insane.
That'd be completely crazy.
Yeah. But like high school, absolutely. Like high school, you're looking at being recruited. There's no reason to. It still should be fun. Again, you're going to lose people if you're not.
That's what I was going to say too. We don't want to push kids away because we're giving all this stuff, and like baseball, I hate that. Like, I don't want that. And we don't want to push good talent away by doing too much too soon. I totally agree. The balance needs to be properly achieved there to keep these kids playing our sport, or we're just going to end up losing them. All right, let's go to the college level because I'm here in Austin, Texas, so one of the better programs of the University of Texas. What is the lay of the land right now in college? You mentioned NIL earlier, right? And that's an opportunity for kids that aren't just in the premier sports, basketball, football mostly, to make some money while they're in college, even if they don't become a pro. And are we seeing the technology of pitching? Do those two marry? Can you look at it as a way to make some money in college by besting yourself, knowing that I probably don't have a chance at the pros, but I can be one of the best college pitchers with this technology, and thus I want to incorporate it. Rob, I'll start with you on the college level. Have you seen how familiar are you with the college level and what they're doing with technology?
I'm pretty familiar with the college. I'm actually writing a book right now on on technology and pitching and focus a little bit on college as well. But there are some that are doing it amazingly and approach like MLB type pitching labs and stuff. And there is a pretty big difference between some of the programs.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that's really cool is there are programs now where it expands beyond just the players. But if you're an analyst, if you want to get into baseball through doing you can work for a program and start crunching numbers, and they'll invite, teams over and you can start networking. I know Wake Forest is really, really good at that. So I think this is really an exciting area where you talk about making money. You're talking about like students that want to get into baseball that don't even play.
Right.
Having opportunities now to make some money or at least expand their careers. And it's become just a better landscape for that. I think I would encourage anybody at any major program to, if you just are interested in baseball, want to learn statistics or want to play with statistics, see what you're made of, go do it. Like it's again, beyond NIL stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I great point there, mentioning that some of the stat crunchers can get their start in college, maybe make a few bucks doing it, or at least put their name on the map so that when they graduate, maybe they start working with a team sooner. Max, what has been your experience with that? And also to add on to that, how Wild West is it with college in terms of the discrepancies between the best programs and the worst? Is it bigger gaps than in minors that we were talking about? Or similar to the minors where some programs are way ahead, others aren't, but the floor is raised in college? What has been your experience there with college programs?
I'll answer your question in a second, just to build off of Rob's point.
Yes.
Dylan Drummy, who was actually on this type of panel last year when we held it, now works for the Chicago Cubs, and he was an analyst for
That's awesome.
Kentucky. So he is living proof of that. And Jackson Del Rosario, who's a friend of mine, was an analyst at my alma mater, University of Arizona, and now works for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So
That's
Rob is
really cool.
absolutely right. If you are looking to work in baseball, the student manager route is a great way to do it. It's also a ton of fun. Like, you will have so much. It's competitive, but also we talk about like not being goofy and everything. You can be goofy in that role a little bit and have some and be
That's
fun
awesome.
with numbers.
And no one heckles you either. You don't get
nobody cares. They know you're just doing a job. Like
Right.
you are not the bane of their existence at that point. But the question about how bad is the discrepancy? It's massive. It way outdoes the minors. I mean,
Is it just a financial thing, or is it a will to want to do it too?
Both. I mean,
Okay.
I think Rob will agree with me. There are a lot of college coaches who they've been doing this for 30 something years, and they had success, and so they're not really willing to adjust and everything. And that's fine, right? Like their resumes will speak for themselves and everything like that. But financially, right, on those smaller schools and stuff, they can't compete with LSU or Wake Forest or UNC's, I think, a really, really good example. They're very, very innovative on the pitching side of things. So they work with what little they have, and then they try to expand from there. They have to hire really good coaches, right? Like, that's what they need to do. Is those smaller schools and everything have to hire really, really good coaches if they can't find the kind of financial investment to compete with those upper tier programs. But it's massive. I mean, even in the junior college level where I was at Santa Barbara City College, and we have a TrackMan in-stadium unit now and everything, so we have data and we can send it off to schools and everything, which is very, very helpful, especially when we have a guy who's now throwing 95, Will Putnam. Keep an eye on him.
Awesome.
But it's you could look at us and you'd say, all right, like, they're trying, and then you might go to other schools in the area and you're like, they got nothing, right? And that's in junior college. At the Division I level, where the money is really, really real, it's the discrepancies are huge.
And I wonder if teams will see, or the programs will see, the benefit of investing that, because it is still kind of a drop in the bucket overall, I think, to get your program up to snuff, especially if you're a D1 like premier school. Do you think all the premier schools are there, or are there some like power conference teams, Max, that are still behind the curve?
I would say that there are some power conference teams that might still be behind the curve. Again, I'm not going to name.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not asking you to do that at all.
But I think it would be foolish to assume that, given the fact that 3 years ago, I think most college campuses were not really up to date, that all of them have sort of adapted at this level. I think they're trying, though. I think the average Power 4 now, which is
I guess it's not Power 5 anymore.
Pac-12.
Yeah, I can't keep track of all the changes there.
They're trying. I think they're making progress, but I think there are still, the difference from the top of the SEC, the top of the SEC to the bottom of the SEC is probably pretty large.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was going to say, it also becomes an issue in the transfer portal, right? Like, if you think you're got a chance at making it, or you want to, like, you're starting to scratch the surface of who you are, you may go to another school that's got a great pitching lab or got a great coach with technology and say, this dude could take me to the next level. I mean, I don't mean to pick on, like, Chase Burns told me, like, that was one of his reasons for going to Wake, was he felt like they had a plan for him to get better. Not that Tennessee's like not a great program, but he, in his mind, that was a way of him getting better, that he thought the technology and the philosophy would help. So the portal ends up creating a lot of incentive, I think, to modernize your facilities and stuff, because it's something to, again, differentiate yourself when someone's looking to make a decision.
Yeah, you can't just keep players. They now have some autonomy, and so that's an incentive to get back to raise your floor with this technology to keep the guys that you get. I think that's a great point there. Rob, I know you're pitching ninja, right? So I'm sorry to even bring up hitting at all here, but what's the discrepancy between hitting tech and pitching tech? Is pitching just more conducive to technology with the data and designing pitches and all that? Or in your experience, as you've done all this pitching stuff, you maybe have seen some of the hitting stuff. Is it catching up at all? Because I feel like, in my experience, my limited experience, pitching's way ahead of the curve on hitting in terms of technology.
Without a doubt, so pitching's a lot easier to, and I hate to say this because it's not easy, but it's a lot easier because you're in control of everything. Nothing
Right.
happens until you throw the ball. Theoretically, if you throw the ball the same way and you can spin it the same way every time, it should go the same spot, move similarly. You can at least design pitches. Hitting is reactive. Hitting is actually, if we were determining it based on traditional sports, it'd be on defense or a counterpuncher to the offense of a pitcher. But still, there are technology advances like Traject is one thing that you can imitate basically anybody's pitch and take reps against it. You have VR that you can watch every type of pitch and hit against them as well. So you are making improvements on it. And then theoretically, like I was talking to Brent Rooker, he'd say like, I can tell biomechanically, this is my best swing and this is a pitch that I can hit with my best swing. So I'm going to narrow what I'm looking for. It may not even, you may not even practice against it. It may just be like eliminating other pitches. Like I am not going to chase a pitch at this count unless it is in this zone where I know my swing biomechanically works better. So we have a lot of things that are improving hitting. And, obviously we have to keep doing it because as much as I'd like it, it's just not that much fun to have 27 strikeout games and nobody getting a hit. Like it's fun for me, but after all, even that would be boring for me, right? So you want hitters to keep up. It needs to be a balance. But yeah, pitching, I think it's closing maybe the gap's closing a tiny bit because we do have more technology in hitting, which you do love to see. And I think it's going to close a little bit more soon with just advances in technology and the ability to visualization and stuff for hitters.
Has that been your experience as well, Max, that hitting is closing the gap a bit, but that pitching is still way out in front?
Yeah, I think Rob's right. The hitters are making significant progress to kind of combat the data difference in pitching versus hitting and everything. I will say I agree with Rob that I think it's good, right? Baseball's better when you have dominant forces going against each other. Aaron Judge versus Tariq Skubal is a very, very fun matchup to watch. It doesn't matter the result, right? Watching the best hitter on the planet go against arguably the best pitcher on the planet is a fun thing to watch. And so if we know that Skubal is going to get Judge out almost all the time, it's not as fun, right? And it's not as interesting to watch. So it's good that hitting is catching up. As much as it may pain me to say, might
even as giant pitcher nerds, all three of us, like the strikeouts are a little bit much. I want to see the ball in play. I want to see a more exciting game. So I'm with you guys there too. You mentioned virtual reality, Rob. Where is virtual reality right now with regards to pitchers? Because I know with the hitters, they can put the goggles on and, like you said, see every type of pitch from every player, maybe get a better read on it. Are we seeing any advancements for pitchers with virtual reality at all?
That's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. I know guys that will play MLB The Show as themselves against hitter like lineups. Giolito,
Lucas Giolito. Yep.
Yeah. He's not the only one. There are guys that will do that. As far as I've got to think there is. I have not had any experience with that though.
Max, anything on your end there with virtual reality for pitching?
I haven't. I'm with Rob. I haven't heard of anything. The only thing I could think of would be maybe they do the hitting thing and they see their own stuff from a hitter's perspective.
Yeah,
and then maybe try to make adjustments from there. Beyond that, I don't even know. Because throwing, it's like the old towel drills and stuff like that. You can't do VR from a throwing. You're not doing any. You're not getting anything out of it, right? So I don't know how it would go, other than maybe you just watch your own stuff and maybe make tinkers from that.
You know what I would love to see is some ability to there are two things like technologically that I would love to see just take off. One is the mental game stuff. Like I would we know the mental game is important. We can't measure it though. So what do you do with that? And if there was a way to measure that somehow using some kind of, I think there are people experimenting with brainwave stuff, other things like that. That's interesting to me, as well as deception. Something other than hey, he hides the ball well, but actually determining when a hitter picks it up and maybe two similar pitches that one's harder to hit, like two pitchers throwing the same thing, but one does something funky. And it may not be universal among all hitters. It may be to a given hitter, that stuff is deceptive from this pitcher. Like you always hear stories from a pitcher saying, I just can't get this guy out. Or I can get this guy out every time. And it may be, a weird guy. But it also may just have to do with the way that hitter picks something up off that pitcher. And maybe there is something to the deceptive, maybe hitter specific, as opposed to, we focus on, hey, you just need to hide the ball better.
Yeah, I do think they'll probably figure something out, right? Like that's the thing. Maybe we can't all figure out what the VR would be used for pitching, but I'm sure they'll figure something out. Let's look forward. Max, what is the next frontier as far as pitching development with the technology, right? We've got a lot more portable stuff, as you mentioned, both the portable TrackMan, the Rapsodo, and all that. We've taken things directly to the player. They can get in these coaching programs, either with a pitching coach like yourself or at an academy like Tread and Driveline and all that. What's the next frontier?
I think it's trying to beat the epidemic of injuries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Rob mentioned earlier about how Hawkeye, they can track biomechanical data. I had a conversation with a major league pitching coach that said that the biomechanical data that they have now can help them lead to prevent future injuries, right? Because they can see if somebody's arm slot is dropping. And if it drops significantly, they'll know that they're at risk right then and there for an injury, right?
That's
Because
huge.
if your arm is dropping, your arm is tired, and it probably means that there's something hurt somewhere in your arm, right? So it came up in a conversation with this pitcher who had not really thrown a ton during the season in their past, right? Like the most innings they had thrown in a calendar year was like 100. And the question was, are you concerned about this person potentially pushing 160 to 180 innings? And the coach's response was, no, because we can track that a lot better now. Now it's about applying that to the most dangerous time of the year for pitchers, which is right now. It's if you're going to get hurt, the bulk of Tommy John surgeries will come in the next month and a half, right? I think Rob can speak to this better than I can, but this is the thing that's the future, is figuring out a way to fix this time of year, whether it be understanding throwing programs better, whether it be putting them into biomechanical labs earlier, right? That's kind of the thing that every team is trying to solve. I remember Eno Saris said, for as many people as there are criticizing the infatuation with velocity and everything like that, there are as many people trying to figure out how to keep them healthy while gaining velocity and everything like that. And that line from Eno, who's a very bright man, has stuck with me quite a lot.
Yeah, I think that is very well said. Rob, what do you think as far as the next frontier here? Obviously, trying to get pitchers to stay more healthy, I think, is absolutely where things are going to be focused. Anything that you can think of that is going to help that?
I mean, I think Max nailed it. I think that is the new frontier. There are things like looking at hot spots in your body, like maybe something, you can determine that based on muscle usage. There's again, biomechanical stuff. And the big thing is bridging the off-season work and the start of the season. Because again, it used to be guys didn't pick up a baseball. Now almost everybody does. And there's so many people that are throwing year round and everybody's at a different point. So yeah, the ability to measure things in real time now is huge. And the ability, so I guess the question I have is about sharing that data. Are there any ramifications of that? Do teams keep that to themselves, or what ability do they have to share that? That I don't know. And are the facilities sharing biomech data with the teams that they get to say, hey, this is what we're seeing? Those things are just communication is big.
Yeah, which was Mac's big point from the beginning, is communication between players and coaches, between academies and the teams that the players for. So I think that is a great point there. And outside of limited examples that you guys would know individually, I'm sure it's different. It depends, right, Max? So I definitely think that is definitely something that depends on the academy, on the team, on the player, etc. So yeah, I mean, keeping guys healthy is the big thing. Can you guys think of anything that can help keep pitchers healthy that isn't something silly like I've heard people try to say, well, we should have a speed limit. Oh yeah, good luck instituting that. What are you talking about? Yeah, we're not going to do any of that garbage. But can you think of anything that you try to incorporate in your coaching, Max, to help keep pitchers healthy? Because I know it is remarkably difficult, damn near impossible, I would say. But what are you out there doing to try to help pitchers stay healthier? Is it about recovery? Is it about not overdoing it in a given session, et cetera, et cetera?
So, uh, I acknowledge that it can just happen, right? And I think that would be foolish to not acknowledge that you can throw one pitch and boom, next thing you know, your life is dramatically different, right? So it can just happen. A lot of it to me is, I think the phrase that I've seen being used is throwing economy or training economy, essentially, right? And it's trying to make sure that your high intent days stay high intent and your low intent days stay low intent, right? So when we're structuring out schedules and everything like that, and so for a typical college pitcher, it's kind of like if they're a starter, they have their start day, and then the rest of the week is built around that start day, right? And so it's programming the high intent days to make sure, like, okay, on the days we throw bullpens, we might as well lift because we're already throwing a bullpen. That's already a high intent thing. Let's make sure that we're just making it keep that way. And then on the low intent days, it's, hey, it's low intent. You don't do anything else. Like if you're trying to, go out to long toss on a low intent day, you are completely negating your recovery and everything like that, right? A lot of it comes down to, I think Rob will agree with me, athletes need to sleep better. They don't sleep enough, especially at the college and the high school levels and everything like that. They're too busy texting somebody that they shouldn't be texting at 1:00 in the morning. And they don't get the amount of sleep that they need. Recovery is a large part of it. At the upper levels, it's way trickier because they're already doing a ton to try and keep them healthy.
Yeah.
And a lot of it also comes down to honesty from the player too.
Yes.
Like if you're dealing with something, you need to say it. I think 30-something years ago, 40-something years ago, guys pitch through injury all the time.
Gotta tough it out.
Right. But that was always dumb. Right?
Always.
We need to call that what it is. It's dumb.
Yes.
If you're
remarkably.
dealing with something, you need to say something. And I think for athletes, that's still hard because you want to win, you want to compete, and all these.
And you don't want to let the team down by having to go on the IL or whatever, even though that's the best thing for you. I get it. It is difficult, but like you got to take care of yourself because going out there at 80% is not going to help the team either.
And put yourself in their shoes. They got to that point because of how competitive they are.
Right.
Right. For example, Trent Thornton went to Ardrey High School where I was a coach there last year. And Trent Thornton is a super competitive guy. And if he's not 100%, guess what? He's still going to try and pitch through it because he's so competitive. And so you got to sit there and tell that guy that, hey, I need you to rest and tell me when you're not healthy. That is difficult. That is hard. And it's okay to acknowledge that that's hard. But that is part of the problem is that athletes themselves want to compete. They want to win.
Especially at that high level.
And that goes back to that they need to trust you. And if they don't trust you, they won't tell you if they're hurt, right? Because they think you'll use it against them. And that's a big
because some teams do, right?
They do.
So
right?
I understand the trepidation for the player too, because then it does get used against you in arbitration, 6 months later. And you're like, if I hadn't said anything, I could have played through it. So that is a push-pull that is very difficult.
The Josh Hader case, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Josh Hader arbitration case always lives in my mind about that, where they were basically like, well, they basically used the amount of innings he threw against them. And he was like, okay, then I'm not going to throw multiple innings anymore. By the way,
and then he got roasted for that.
That was a great move. He did the absolute right thing.
Yes, he did.
In that move all the time.
Yep. But he got roasted in the public for it, right? Everyone's like, this guy he's not a team competitor, like all that sort of BS. And I hated that. I stood on Hader's side for that because of what they had done to him in arbitration the year before.
I like the Dodgers philosophy, which is you just sign every pitcher. And if you do that,
just get every pitcher ever.
Yeah, like who cares? They pitch once a month and we're just fine. Like get hurt.
We got to get through the whole season anyway, so we'll just go with a new group every month. There's 6 months. So we do have a question from the chat that I like here. So if we see the work being done, someone's working with you, Max, or working with the team, but the outcomes aren't necessarily there. Like they're not getting better, but maybe since they're still pitching, they're staying healthier. Is there any way to show that if they weren't doing this work, even though the results aren't better, their health might be? Is there a way to kind of balance those two things to say like, hey, we know that your ERA hasn't dropped, your WHIP hasn't dropped, but you're still on the mound pitching healthily. is there any way to show those two different things there when the results aren't coming with the work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. To whoever asked that, gold star to you. It's it's tough because as a coach, you're focused on the process, right? Are we doing
Mm-hmm.
everything in the process right? And then when the results aren't there, you're obviously going to question the process, right? Because
Yeah.
ultimately, you have to win and everything like that, and you have to perform. And if you feel really good with the process, and the pitcher feels really good with the process, then it's just kind of being like, this is a difficult game. Things turn, right? Law of averages, right? You got to come down eventually. And obviously, you can see under the deeper stuff too. Like if somebody has a 4.2 ERA, but they are rocking with a 3.2 xERA, you're just you don't want to say, hey, you're just getting unlucky, because listen, don't say that. It doesn't go over very well.
No, they don't want to hear that.
They don't want to hear that. But if you say, hey, just keep sticking to this process, and maybe we can make some small adjustments here, like fine-tuning the pitch sequencing and everything like that. Maybe there's a tell that we're not noticing or something, whatever it may be. You kind of keep yourself open-minded. If you keep yourself open-minded as a coach, then the players, again, more receptive to that, right? Because they know that you're trying everything to make them better. And the argument of like health goes back to that depends. Like if this guy hasn't been healthy, and yeah, maybe he's not performing, but he's staying healthy, then it's like, hey, that's a win for you, right? Like
Right.
being healthy is important, and you're staying on the mound. That's something that you have never done before, kind of deal. But
Is there an
again,
easy way to show them that the work is why they're healthy, though?
yeah, I mean, like they should know, right? They should
Right.
feel it, right? If they can sit there and say, I feel way better than ever before, then
That's because of all these tasks
right,
that we're doing.
all these
Right.
things. If they're just still like, but I'm not performing, you have to find other ways to kind
Do
of
you ever say maybe it's a skill issue, you loser? No, I'm just kidding.
not to call out a writer or anything, but I do remember reading an interview where he asked this players like, did you ever think you were cooked? And I was like, how? Wow. Like that's so bold.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, don't do that would be my recommendation.
I would agree. Rob, did you have anything to add there?
I was going to say, we have unlimited stats to look at, so I'm sure you could find something that backs up the fact that, it may not be reflective of what you're seeing, but you are doing better. This pitch is moving more. It ranks here and it used to rank here. Something, because it is a part of a coach's job is to encourage and to, not blow smoke up people's butts, but to be able to say realistically, this is where you were, this is where you are. And there's so many things we can look at that we can find something to show progress, or else your methodology may be something you want to go back and question, like, hey, if it's not working, then I got to dig deeper as a coach and learn something.
And are coaches open to that in y'all's experience, that like maybe they need to do the work there, or are they stubborn? I mean, I'm sure it depends situation there, but like, what have you found more of, Max, between when things aren't working? Do the coaches go back to the drawing board, or do they put it on the players?
The good ones will.
Yeah. I figured that would be the answer, because you got to be open to it, right? You don't have everything figured out, and every player is different too. So maybe you're just, whatever worked with this other player maybe just doesn't work with this guy because he doesn't process the data the same. He doesn't have the same body, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that that's fair. Rob, another question from the chat here. You mentioned the year-round throwing window. What's the state of analysis on determining the best way to approach the off season? And do we have anything that's close to universal? Is it team by team? Is it player by player? Where are we on that? Because you guys talked about that being a big gap to bridge between the off season and the start of spring training. Where are we on getting better? Let's just start at the major league level right now with pitchers' off season throwing programs versus what the team might desire, etc.
It is all over the place, and it really is player specific. I mean, there are players that are just now saying, hey, you know what? I think I want to throw year round because I need to improve the way this pitch is working. I need, I need my velo to bump up a couple miles an hour, and I'm going to work really hard this offseason, do it. And other guys are comfortable with their contract, comfortable with their situation, had a great year, want to recover. It is all over the place, and maybe it should be. Like, it's all individualistic. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I have a problem when it's not communicated and we're treating everybody the same, especially at the team level, where they don't know what someone did in the offseason, or a pitcher hides it. And, somehow then they're supposed to ramp up a different way, and they end up getting hurt. That's really the issue. And we have so many different things, ways to measure sleep and stress on the body and everything, that just taking advantage of that, you have to be under the assumption that that's going to work out better the more information you have. But yeah, it is a little bit of a wild west there, but again, I think it has to be at this.
Yeah, because again, players are so different. The classic, it depends. Max, I imagine that you deal with that then too with your players, that you don't give them all the same plan. You figure out what works best for them, even if they're vastly different, because this pitcher is 6 feet tall, this one's 6'5", all those sorts of factors. So how do you go about determining what the best plan is for somebody in the off season?
It's a lot of conversations with them about what they think is best, right? So, at City College, at the end of every season, we kind of sit down.
City College, I'm a Greendale guy. Sorry. It's a community reference.
Good joke.
Thank you.
At Santa Barbara City College, let me specify. We sit down with them, and being a junior college, listen, I operate under the assumption they don't come back, which is the way the level should work, in my opinion. You should be going to junior college and then transfer on. But we sit down with them and we say, hey, what do you think is best for you? What do you think is best for your career right now? What do you think, do you want to work on, and everything like that? We prefer not to send people out to summer ball too, especially for college and high school guys. I think Rob will agree with me. Summer ball has definitely decreased in its value for pitchers. Listen, I fully understand it in the talks of like transfer portal and junior college recruiting and everything. That still helps, absolutely. But in terms of like, does it make pitchers better? I think the general answer is no, it doesn't really help at all. So conversations are always about trying to figure out what's best for them. Personally, I am a big fan of taking some time off. I think your body just needs it. Like throwing 12 months a year, I don't see how you hold up in the short term or in the long term. And listen, taking time off does not have to be, 2 months. It can be 3-4 weeks, right? But
it doesn't mean you're sitting around eating the worst food, doing nothing.
You're still working out and everything like that. Like, if you're not on modern day, we talked a lot about pitching, but a large part of this is the strength and conditioning side of baseball has really gotten a lot better.
Yes.
Really, really. The work of driveline and tread and teams, like Eric Cressy has done I think Eric Cressy has made a dramatic impact on baseball that the average person has no idea.
I think you're 100% right.
He is one of the most influential people in baseball, and I think the average fan could not tell you who he is, right? But if all of that stuff goes into like what's best for you, right? And how do we go around that? And everybody is going to be different.
Yeah, I think so too. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was going to say, it also makes you better as a coach, right? Like if a player knows that you're out for them as opposed to out for yourself, you're going to be a better coach. You're going to have players that respect you, players that enjoy playing, players that know that you're on their side, and they'll play better for you. So I think it's a win-win in that situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, my career's over. It doesn't. Right. I'm washed up. It doesn't matter anymore. Like if I could go throw, I would try. But every time I throw, I'm pretty sure you hear some noises. We're like,
what was those cracking and popping noises?
Yeah, like it doesn't. It's what's important is them. And I think Rob definitely phrased it well there. The player is the person that matters, not me.
Yeah, and I think the more coaches that understand that, the better, right? Like. That is how to be a great coach, not just to say my way, the highway, this and that. And we still got some of those old school guys, but thankfully, I think we see more and more coaches understanding that they're there for the players. They're trying to make the players better. By the way, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I think one Nick Pollock will be creeping in here at any moment right now. But if you guys have any other questions and you can get them in quick enough, let me know. But guys, it's been great talking with you here. How excited are you for spring training? I cannot believe we made it through another ugly winter. I hate the winter as a baseball nerd.
Oh, totally agree. Have you taken a look at the pitchers that are due back this year? Like,
yes, you can make an entire team of elite guys. Yeah, the entire Dodgers, half of the Rays with McClanahan, a full year of Rasmussen. I know Springs isn't back for them. He's now with the Athletics, but like, yeah, so many. Brandon Woodruff coming back, like so many guys. Sandy Alcantara, I can just keep naming them.
Perez, Spencer Strider, Shohei Ohtani. I don't even know who I'm looking, and you have a full year of DeGrom, hopefully. This is going to be a ridiculous year for pitching, I think.
It just shows you how much talent we have, though. We had none of those guys last year, and it was still very robust talent pool. It's just there's so much great pitching out there. Go ahead, Max.
hopefully this is the year Zach Wheeler kind of comes through, man. Like
With Cy
how many
Young.
top five Cy Young finishes is the guy gonna have in a row?
Right.
before he
He's so
finally gets
good,
Let's get
too,
him
yeah.
his Cy Young. I agree. We're gonna look back on him if he never gets it. Be like, man, always the bridesmaid type of vibe. There he is. There's Nick Pollock.
Zach Wheeler should have won it instead of Corbin Burns, and I still,
I think that's fair.
one of my proudest tweets, because it's the only one that Jeff Passan quote tweeted and said this is the right take, and I will go to the grave with that on my tombstone.
Love it.
But man, yeah, Zach Wheeler, come on, he deserves this. Also, yeah, I mean, Sandy Alcantara coming back, Shane McClanahan coming
Sandy,
back, DeGrom.
Max, you're being requested on Blue Sky, by the way. Are you gonna get on Blue Sky soon? Someone in the chat.
I'm such a
requested
curmudgeon with social media. I've never downloaded TikTok or anything like that.
Yeah, I know,
Like-
but just do Blue Sky instead of Twitter. Just,
I think
I know you do Twitter still, so just do Blue Sky.
it may happen. It may happen. I could be convinced. I'm a very
And Rob,
stubborn person, though.
Who is your favorite pitcher this year? I just got to hear it. Who's the guy?
Oh, dude,
I know.
I got asked this question yesterday on MLB Network, and I
I'm so
dodged
original.
it. No, I know. Like I was sitting there going, like, Shohei for like engagement purposes is the guy I'm
Sure.
looking forward to, like, because it selfishly. But
Right.
how could I argue against like Strider, DeGrom full
Yeah.
year? There's just so much I don't even know. And then you have guys like Felix Bautista.
Oh yeah, that's
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
Good.
That's gonna be a
Reliever. I'll
huge
acknowledge
piece for
reliever
Baltimore.
for you, Rob. The real answer is Michael King, the king now with a crown, and I
A
can't
deserved crown.
Wait. I
He's
can't
awesome.
wait. He's
Well,
gonna
he
I
be
may
love
not
how
be
great-
in Diego much longer. So
True.
well, no,
They might.
They're
They're looking to move somebody who's making money, and it could be him.
just why? How could you do that? He's so good. Okay,
He is so good. I totally agree with you. Fantastic.
Max and Rob, really thank you guys so much for doing this, and really
Great
huge
stuff.
thanks to Paul Sporer. I can't thank you enough. You're sick, and I called upon
Back
you
to bed.
yesterday. I was like, I need somebody for this, and you stepped up.
Couldn't have done it
Um,
yesterday.
Chat,
No
really
shot.
big,
But
huge thanks to these guys
got
for doing
better.
this fantastic panel. Every single year we do this, and there's always something new. And VR for pitchers to hitters is what. Yeah, I can't wait for that one. That's got to happen. Just for me.
Absolutely.
I'm not. I don't. I just need a pitcher and be like, oh, I'm bad. Okay. But right. Thank you guys so much for being part of PitchCon. It's just so great having you here.